What if the fantasy worlds we escape to could help us better navigate the real one we live in? What if battling mystical foes and forces and bonding with magical friends and followers could unlock confidence, connection, and a deeper understanding of ourselves? What if the simple act of stepping into a character and sitting around a table could create power in your real life? Power that would enhance your voice, your true identity, and a sense of belonging. And what if the magical, unpredictable, and deeply human world of Dungeons and Dragons isn't just a game, but a tool for transformation? Whether you've never picked up a 20-sided die like me, or you've been adventuring for decades, this conversation is going to challenge you to rethink what you believe about what this kind of play can do for you and others, and what healing can happen when imagination meets intention. Hey, my friends, welcome back to the UNCOMMODiFiED Podcast. I'm Tim Windsor, and today my guest on the show is Britt Scott. Britt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, awesome. It's going to be a great conversation. Now, who's Britt Scott? Well, I met Britt. I'm going to explain my background here. I met Britt through Craig Minchin. And for those of you who listen to the podcast, you know Craig is my resident leadership historian who is coming back on the show. Going to be back on the show in a little while to do another leadership podcast. So I love it. But I met Brittany through Craig, and they actually do some online gaming together and connected. And then Britt came up and visited in Canada, and we got a chance to meet Britt. And what a great journey it's been. And I wanted to have Britt on my show and chat about all this world she's involved in. So here's who Britt is. Britt is a very passionate Dungeons and Dragons player and game master who found her way into this world of tabletop role-playing games in 2021, and she learned the game alongside of her son during the pandemic. Today, Britt runs therapeutic D&D games for teens through Social Bridges and leads tables at conventions, creating safe places that welcome people in where they can belong. Her game's focus isn't just on fantasy and fun, although there's a lot of that. It's on helping players discover more about themselves along the way, build confidence, and connect with others. And as you'll discover, Britt's first character, Anya, taught her just how powerful storytelling can be, both at the table and beyond. Through her work, Britt shows how the simple joy of play can create space for growth, friendship, and belonging. And that's what I love about this conversation. And I just want to, again, full disclosures, everybody's listening, I don't know anything about this world. So this conversation is born out of the fact that I want to discover and understand this world. And Britt has this wonderful experience here. So we're going to sort of explore that tonight. And of course, every Uncorked conversation starts for me with a little bit of a drink. So Britt, what are you drinking tonight?
I have a jasmine tea in one of my favorite mugs.
There you go. If you're on the YouTube channel, you see her favorite mug, and jasmine tea sounds good. I have to admit, I'm not a big jasmine tea fan. So I broke out an Irish whiskey called McConnell's. I bought this recently. I actually tried it with Craig the other day. And I'm going to drink this because I thought it's sort of an ode to the old world. You know, the world of Dungeons and Dragons seems like, I'm thinking of like Scotland, and I'm thinking of the medieval times. I don't know how that works. So I'm going to celebrate with a little medieval drink. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I love Irish whiskey. Reminds me of Canadian whiskey. Love Irish whiskey. All right, so let's get this started. Let's figure out how we want to unpack this conversation, Britt. So tell me a little bit about, again, your journey into this whole world and where it's taking you, what it's teaching you. So let's just start with, okay, you get involved in 2021 or so and you're exploring this area. Do you go directly to this area of D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, or do you experiment with other sort of role games first, or how do you begin to get in this journey?
It really started with, so my son at the time was 11 and had been playing the Pokemon card game, and pandemic, you really couldn't go interact with a lot of people, so it was him and me, and that got boring after a while. So he's like, hey, I heard about Dungeons and Dragons. Can we play? Like, I've never done that. So we go grab some of the books. We get the starter pack, and I start teaching myself how to be a game master, how to run the games. And we were playing together, and eventually led to me running a family game where it had my mom, my brother, my son, and my two younger nephews. So we had a 6-year-old as the youngest, up to my mom playing.
Oh, that's cool. Now, help me understand a little bit. Because I don't even really know, where did this thing come from? I mean, okay, where did Dungeons and Dragons come from? I mean, it's a game. Somebody, I guess, invented it, and now people play it. And how does this whole world work? And where does it start?
Oh, well, I mean, and I'm rusty on the origins of Dungeons and Dragons
Okay.
in particular, but Gary Gygax and a bunch of his friends back in the 70s, late 70s as I recall, might be early 80s, were playing a lot of different tabletop war games and decided that they wanted to change up how that looked. And so they started creating specific characters. So you could be a wizard, you could be, a sneaky rogue, you could be someone who's good in the forest. And what do those stories look like when you're now at a table telling those stories? And it's just evolved from there. And it's not just Dungeons and Dragons. That's like saying Kleenex is all tissue. So
Okay.
there's a lot of different games you can play.
Okay. So at the basis, though, there's this game being played, but
Mm-hmm.
storytelling is the central part of the
Absolutely.
game. Is that, am I
Yeah.
understanding that correctly?
Collaborative storytelling.
Collaborative storytelling, which it kind of, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, because I don't think of collaborative storytelling. I think of, when I tell my grandkids a story at night, it's not a Nana and Papa collaboration. It's a Papa story, or a Nana story. So this is a collaborative storytelling game. So help me understand, does that mean every game is different, and you're making it up as you go? I mean, is that how this world works?
Yeah, you can. So there are books that have pre-made stories, so it gives the game master a kind of a framework to work off of. But even those are different every time you run through it with different people.
Huh.
Or you have people who will just completely create their own story. I do both. So I have one group where I'm making up the story for them, and I have plenty of books where I use the different modules to help tell that story.
That's fascinating. So you get into this. First, you're playing, and then, I mean, you're participating, and now, I don't know, you're a game master. I mean, so first of all, does somebody come and give you, like, how do you become a game master? Does somebody come and, like, say, "Hey, you're a game master now," or how does this whole thing work, Brett?
I actually wondered the same thing when I first started. I'm like, when do I count as a game master? What I learned is if you're willing to sit down and help lead the story and guide the players through, you are now a game master.
Okay, so the game master is the lead storyteller, is helping people find their story, tell it. So this game is played now. You can play it in person,
Mhm.
often played online. Obviously, that's how you and Craig play. You and Craig play, and there's other people who play in that game. I understand, and so everybody has to find a character. I guess is a character sort of like an alter ego, meaning is there connection to who I am, or is the character I'm creating or I get, is it fundamentally different than who I am?
That is entirely up to you. That's kind of the beauty of it. A lot of newer or first time players tend to pull from what they're familiar with. So it's very common for their first characters that they're creating to reflect something in them. When you have longtime players, that's where they start to get, oh, I want to try something completely off the wall, completely different, uh, exact opposite of me. So you'll get people trying different voices, trying different personas, even trying to, like, I have one friend who loves to play girl characters and he's a guy. So it all just depends on your comfort level
Okay,
and the story you're trying to tell.
that's very, very fascinating. So as these stories are unfolding, there is some elements in which, again, I don't understand the game enough, but there's a die involved, and there, or dice. I don't know if there's multiple. Is there one or two? One.
There's actually 7 dice.
Oh my gosh, there's seven. Okay, there's seven, and there's seven dice, and these dice, they are get rolled, I guess, somehow in the game. And is it a predictor then of what will happen, or does it provide options for you?
It is the thing that helps when you're trying to decide, okay, what comes next. So instead of just saying, okay, I attack that goblin, you roll the 20-sided die since you brought that one up, and how good you are at it, it helps dictate how well you do. The dice gives that element of uh, unpredictability.
Unpredictability. I guess almost sort of we could look at this world of fate.
Yeah.
of fate or unpredictability that comes as we sort of cast this dice and say, okay, what's the dice leading me to next? And then it leads us into another part of the story.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting. So I want to talk right now personally for you, and then we can talk about others in a second. So again, world I don't know anything about it, which is really interesting for me. And to be honest, I'm not sure if if I even want to play. I don't even know if I'd want to play, but I find it fascinating. And I know that just because in meeting you and because I'm such great friends with Craig and have such respect for Craig, I have such respect for you. I found it fascinating that you found something really interesting. So here's my question. So what has this game done for Brit? And what are you learning about yourself along the way as you find these other characters, your first character, Anya, which tells me there's others. But what is this doing, do you think, in you and for you, Brett?
I realized about a year into playing that I was actually self-therapying. Um,
Mm.
that I was, when I created Anya, it was not with the intention of recreating Brit. I picked things that I really liked. So she's an elf. She's a ranger and a druid, so she's really good at nature things. She's connected to animals. Um, and so just all of her experiences as I started creating a backstory for her, how did she get to where she was? Who is Anya? When I sat down and really reflected on that, realized, oh, that's Brit from like 8-ish to 30-ish. Just didn't realize it. So it's getting to play as Anya and going through these different stories and these different experiences. I would make choices that Brit, was not necessarily comfortable doing, but as Anya, I felt more comfortable. And as I did that more, I realized, oh, hey, Brit can make that choice. Brit can speak out more. Brit can be more confident doing it.
Ah,
Enter that thing here.
that's fascinating. So that's the whole thing where, like, I did a bit of reading, and it's interesting because a lot of people talk about finding their voice somehow, which is interesting because it's the voice of a character. But what you're saying is somehow, because these things are connected for you, as Anya finds her voice and starts doing things, you start realizing they're realizing there's a mirroring reflection here, but it also gives you some permission somehow to say, hey, I can do that, or I can be that. And I also find it interesting you talk about creating a backstory. So let me understand. So you have a character somehow, and then does everybody create a backstory for their character?
If you are hopping into a game that's expected to be longer, it is generally a good idea to have some kind of backstory because you want to have, just like us, our history, where we come from, informs who we are right now,
Right.
informs our goals, informs what it is that we are trying to do, wanting to accomplish. And so when you're jumping into these stories, to just jump in and say, I'm an elf and I'm good at tracking. Great, that's really cool. But who are you? Why are you on this mission? Why does this matter to you? Why does accomplishing anything in this world mean anything? So when you have a backstory, I have a family, they're gone, or I had to go away because I had to go on this journey, or there's all different ways to be able to incorporate where you come from and then allow conversation because now you're in a group. So you're with other people who also have all these different backstories, and it gives you that opportunity to start learning about what their goals are.
That's interesting. And Brent, I wonder as we talk, and again, listeners, if you're listening, I'm sort of brailing this out in the moment myself and trying to figure out how I want to relate to this conversation. But I'm wondering if part of maybe the magic, the real magic, I suppose, of this is it's tucking into an ancient form of communication, which is storytelling, which unfortunately, particularly in North America, we have lost connection to story and storytelling. Of course, lots of other cultures are still deeply connected to this idea of story and storytelling. I spent a lot of time in Africa, for instance, where story and storytelling is just the natural way to communicate and understand each other. But in North America, we've been sort of storytelling is something that's maybe it's in the books we read, the fantasy books we read. It's in maybe a little bit of First Nations or indigenous cultures in North America. But in modern day, society, storytelling is something that's probably a lost art in some ways. And so is it partly connecting people back something to something that's ancient and within us in relationship to the idea of story and telling it?
I think so. I think that the more that people play, especially adults, for the record, I think that anyone of any age belongs at the table. I think this is a game that, again, I've run it for 6-year-olds. Doesn't matter how old you are. I think you should be at the table because storytelling is so important. And what it does is it reminds us that we are inherently creative. But I think the older we get, the more we forget that.
Yes. That is, yes, that is so powerful, Britt. What you just said is so powerful and so true. We've forgotten, as you say that, I think about a social media post that actually was posted the morning that you and I are doing this podcast. By the time it releases, it'll be long history, but it actually it's a quote from my book, and it's about this idea that we've lost our sense of who we are. We've gotten amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. And, you know, I so think that's true. I think we have forgotten who we are, and it's interesting for me how you're recognizing and seeing how story is returning you to that and returning people around you as you lead them in these games. It's returning you to that place of story. And I do think that we are created to be storytellers. I think we're naturally story. You think about little kids who make up story, who have these amazing imaginations, who can create all these worlds. We think of these great writers, like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and these writers who created worlds and language and all this stuff. And it is truly in the human DNA to be creative. So you're touching and connecting back to that in this game setting for yourself and others. That is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, before getting into D&D, I I knew I was creative. I like music, I like to read, I love fantasy, but I as I got older kind of strayed away from that, and in playing more,
Mhm.
I've come back to singing. I've actually sang at the table. Yeah, I now I'm creating stories for other people, and that's something I would never have done before. And flip side, like there's one player in particular. He's talked about how as a kid his parents told him he's amazing at telling stories. He could just pull a toy out of a toy box and just come up with a whole thing. But as he got older, we become adults, we fall away from that, we forget that. And at some point he felt that he wanted to reconnect with something, found D&D, was very nervous about it. And the more time that he has spent at the table, and I've had the joy of watching him and playing alongside him for 4 years, he has blossomed. The
Wow.
confidence that he has stepping into the table, trying new things, being creative in that, now writing short stories. He wrote one of the songs that I sang at the table, and now he's writing his own book. Like,
Wow.
to be able to see someone blossom like that is just amazing. And that's why I love getting to do what I do for the adults that I run for and for my kids. Like, it's,
Wow. That is so powerful, and it's really interesting because I will have to say it's so counter to I think what a lot of people think about D and D. I mean, I'm sure you're aware that there's a subset of people historically and maybe even today who see or who saw Dungeons and Dragons in a fairly negative, almost, I don't know if the right word is evil. I don't know what the word is, but they saw it in a way that was really foreboding and dangerous and something that to be avoided.
mhm.
I mean, the way you're describing it just fundamentally is totally different and disconnected from that world of we should be scared of this thing. I mean, I imagine you're aware that some people have a
Oh, yeah.
fairly, unfortunately, difficult or sort of weird way of looking at it.
Yes, I am active in my church. I am practicing Christian, and so yeah, when I started to share at church that I play D&D, I play Dungeons and Dragons, I am running games now for kids. There were some folks who were like, "Really, that game? Yeah, doesn't it have demons in it?" It can, but so can a lot of fantasy stories. So can a lot of movies. So can a
Yeah.
lot of video games. Um, I got the most eye raises when I was trying to explain to someone why I got my first tattoo. Well, my only tattoo at the moment.
Ah.
Um, I, in playing alongside Anya, one of the things that I realized was she was going through a need to reconnect to her goddess. And I was, at the time, not really realizing, going through my own reconnecting to my faith.
Mm.
And as part of that, she ended up getting this tattoo to mark that she was part of an order. And so, for me to show that, oh, I recognize I did the same thing, I got
Ah.
that tattoo.
Yeah.
So we have the tattoo in the same place.
Interesting.
But explaining that to someone at church, that
Yeah.
I have the tattoo of a D&D god on my arm, has definitely raised some eyebrows.
Oh, that's so funny. And and you're such a rabble rouser, Brittany. I mean, look at you. You're
Oh
all a
yeah.
rabble rouser. But it's interesting again because therapeutically, this is interesting. Therapeutically, what's happening is Anya is an expression of you doing things, and then you're finding some permission in that to do that, and you're finding it to be healthy. It's bringing you to a place of wholeness. It's bringing you to a place of being more authentically who you are, maybe even more uncommodified, more back to the
Totally.
unique version that you were created, which I love in this. And so you're finding it therapeutic for yourself. But I also know we talked about it in the intro that you run games through something called social bridges. So
Yes.
explain what that is and tell me how you're seeing the expression of what you're doing in the D&D world. How's that connecting to that world?
So, Social Bridges is actually a group. They started to help be there and support kids pre K through 12. Uh, they provide social and behavioral therapy. So, if you have kids that are struggling socially, possibly on the spectrum, dealing with anxiety, I mean, you name it, then they work with the kids one on one. And then they offer different group opportunities to practice those skills.
Yeah.
And so I had been reached out to. I actually did the interview while I was on my trip up in Canada.
Okay. Wow.
Um, and so we meet once a month over Zoom. So I have my Friday night table has 7 middle and high schoolers, and getting to see them step into character, because some of them use voices, some of them don't. Some of them are not comfortable speaking like in character, like saying, like if I were playing as Anya, I would speak as Anya to another person. Some of them were more comfortable saying, Anya does this, which for those kids, getting them to say that their character does something is a huge step. And then watching that translate to the conversations that they have with each other and watching how that comfort level moves along with them, how recognizing social cues and how they start to recognize it between each other. And so they're taking the skills they're practicing at the table, and you can immediately see that just as they're talking to each other, not in character.
Ah.
And so then to be able to know that they're taking that out away from this game and actually improving and feeling more comfortable and confident in themselves away from that.
Wow, that is so powerful. And it's interesting because I these some of these things I don't talk a lot about. Every once in a while on the podcast, I might make veiled reference to it. But in a sense, it's no different for me. Although I never experienced this in this kind of role playing game. When I was a child, I had some complex psychosocial problems, and I went to a play therapist. Okay, I went to a therapist who was, what, but it was therapy was done or conducted through play.
Yeah.
I was quite young, and so this is a fairly traditional way of doing therapy or therapeutic models with children. And so the idea that therapy can be expressed through play or play can be a great conduit of therapy. I mean, we've known this for years. We have psychologists and psychiatrists that specialize in this, and so the idea that play and playing this kind of game has a therapeutic potential opportunity I mean, should just make common sense to the average person. But again, I think we get so stuck in some things where we get a sense of, well, this is that, and it can't be anything else. What you're finding is that there's this amazing part where it is a game and you're having fun.
Yeah.
But also there's other things that are happening for people, for adults, for teenagers, for children along the way as they express this ancient art of storytelling, as they become better at telling story. And, again, we've all done this when we were kids. We fantasize that I wanted to be, you want to be Spider-Man, you want to be Superman, you want to be something other than yourself that has these powers that can live differently than you feel in the trapped life you have. So I guess it's no different at the end of the day, is it?
Not really, no. It's, no, you can, that's one of the things that I really truly love about this game is you can play in any setting. It doesn't have to be a Tolkien setting.
Uh-huh.
You can play in Star Wars. You can play in Firefly. You can play in Marvel. You can play in, enter the thing that you want to try and explore.
Right.
And you can play there. And you can figure out, well, what does that mean for me?
Huh.
How can that relate back to me? Some people, it's truly just, this is an escape.
Interesting.
Which is also just as important.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. I think we all need that, and we all have different ways of escaping. So, okay, I want to spend some time talking about the role of the dice or the die again. I want to go back to that for a second because that's interesting to me. It introduces an element of risk, chance, fate, call it what you'd like, to the game.
Yeah.
There doesn't have to be, but there is in this case decided that there would be a dice. So does every player, so if you're playing remotely, for instance, again, I have no idea, does every person have their own dice and they roll it, or does the game master control the dice?
No. So a lot of the online programs have ways for you to digitally roll the dice.
Okay.
Which helps. Now, a lot of my players are like me.
Okay.
And we all have
You have the die, okay.
So if players have dice, I encourage them to roll because it's way more fun to roll your math rocks in person.
Okay. What are they called?
We jokingly call them math rocks because it does have a lot of math.
Okay. All right. So I want to do something for fun, and we never talked about this, but just for fun.
Okay.
If we were playing the game right now,
Yeah.
and my character, was at a point of decision, okay, and now I'm assuming that means that the dice are going to get rolled. I got a decision to make. Okay. So we're going to do this live just for fun. It'll be recorded. Okay. So I want you to roll the dice on your table in your place. You live in Florida, right?
I do.
Yeah. I live in Canada. My life sucks compared to yours. You live in Florida. I love that. That's awesome. Okay. So I want you to roll the dice right now on the table where you are at. Go ahead. Roll them.
Well, okay.
Okay, now here's a question. I want you to tell me, based on what you're seeing there, what are my options, or what would happen now if I was at a point of decision?
How about you are standing in a forest.
Okay.
Does your character have a bow or a sword?
You know what? I love the idea of having a bow and arrow.
Okay. So you've got your bow and arrow in hand. And
yes.
You've been tracking something, and you think that you see movement. You're probably pretty good with it. So you're going to have a +3 to your survival, which is your tracking skill. Now you only rolled a 2.
Okay.
So that's where math rocks. You have a 5 for your survival check. You're having a hard time actually following where it's going. So
okay.
You're going to roll one more time.
Uh-oh.
And you roll much better. You rolled an 18. This is for your perception check. So you've lost the trail.
Okay.
Perception is, okay, what can I see around me, right?
Okay.
So if you have an 18, again, you're a hunter, you're good with a bow.
Yeah.
Probably add 2. So that's a dirty 20. That's a very good roll.
Okay.
Okay, now you notice off in the distance, you may have lost the trail, but you notice there's movement up ahead. Do you follow it? Do you try to shoot from where you are?
Oh, do I have a human choice, or do I have to roll the die again to tell me what to do?
That's up to you.
Oh, I follow it.
Okay. So
I'm going right into the deep, dark air. I'm following it.
Okay. Are you trying to be quiet while you do so?
Yeah, I'm sneaky.
Okay. So how sneaky is Tim Windsor?
Oh, I am stealthy.
All right, we'll give you a +3 then, which
Okay.
you rolled a 15. So
Okay.
for an 18, you're pretty quiet.
Nice.
And this, what is it you're chasing? What are
Oh,
you hunting?
I'm hunting a werewolf.
Oh boy. Okay. So as you are tracking this werewolf into this deep, dark forest,
Yes.
you're pretty stealthy. You don't think
Yes.
he notices that you're closing in on him.
No. You can't even smell me.
No, wind's blowing the wrong way.
That's right.
So you get close enough, you can see him. You've got
Yes.
your bow. Do you take the shot or do you wait?
I shoot him immediately right between the eyes because the werewolf represents all the bad things that have ever happened.
Okay, so now you have to make an attack roll, which is still with the d20.
Okay.
So your bow is based on your dexterity.
Yeah.
You roll a 9. You're a hunter.
Yeah.
Clearly, because you're going after a werewolf.
Yeah.
So you're going to add a +6, we'll say, to your roll. So that would be a 15. Definitely would hit a werewolf.
Nice.
So now you have to roll your damage.
Uh-oh.
And that's where you
Is this damage to me or the werewolf?
No. So you shot your bow.
Yes.
It hits the werewolf.
Yeah.
Now you have a different die. This is
Uh-oh.
what your damage die is. So
Okay.
now roll to see how much damage you do.
Okay. Oh, it rolled right on the floor.
It rolled right onto the floor, which is fine. I can still see it. So it's a 5, and then you have a modifier that you add to that. So it would probably end up being 8 or 9 damage. We'll say 9. Is it slams into the werewolf's shoulder? Now he turns and he sees you.
Oh,
What do you do?
I face him. I'm not
Face
running
him with
away.
a bow? Or
Yeah,
you
I'm
have
staying.
something else on you.
You know what? I have a axe, and I'm gonna just right in the forehead. I'm getting him with the axe. The forehead is my favorite place. I get him
can
right in the
tell.
forehead. Yes.
So you go charging in. Do you just go in, or is there a battle cry as you go in? How do you go in after this werewolf?
No, it's like the scream of silence.
Okay, so you just silently go in, and you would roll your d20 again to see if you hit.
Okay.
You can respond.
Uh-oh.
Wow. Okay, I'm rolling really well for you. You got another 15.
Nice.
So yes, with your adding all that in, you would definitely hit again. That would be a different damage die. That's
Nice.
why you have so many different dice.
I hope I got this sucker.
Well, you rolled an 8, so yes, you would definitely hit a little higher. Werewolves are hardier, so then he would turn around, he would try to attack you back.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. We need to stop now because I don't want to die in this episode. So we got to stop now. But hold on. I love the game.
Isn't it fun?
I love it. And you know what's so weird? It's like we never planned that. We never said anything. But I'm telling you something. My heart's pounding. I'm into it.
Yeah.
And that werewolf is a representation of something to me, which is, again, very fascinating. We're just doing this on the fly. Listeners, you might not believe that. You might think that was all staged. Not staged.
No.
And I never told you I was going to do that.
No.
That's kind of fun. Now, let me tell you a story because I think this is interesting to me and the story we're going to have. And Brett, again, thanks for coming on and having this conversation. Again, listeners, if you're listening, I always say you're listening for a reason. I don't know what this episode ought to mean to you. Other than one, I would challenge you, hey, be a storyteller, because storytelling is an ancient art of communication. And whether you do it in Dungeons & Dragons or another game or in your life, let's all return to being great storytellers. But also go read a great story, find a great story and listen to it and read it. And by the way, maybe it's a movie you got to watch, or maybe it's a game you're going to get, or maybe it's D&D. I don't know what it is, but I want to park back onto this idea of the dice. So I may have mentioned possibly once over the time that I've podcasted, I don't know if I have, but I find this fascinating because dice actually play a significant role in my life. And how they play a significant role in my life has nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. And how it plays a role in my life is that there was a point in time when I was 15 years old, and my brother and my sister-in-law had sort of gone on a spiritual journey. And I won't get into all the complexities of that, but they had gone on a spiritual journey, and they were always sort of out there. They was always out there. They were the first hippies in my community. They were heavily into lots of drugs. They were into astral projection in the 60s and early 70s. They were wild creatures, okay? They were like those creatures in the wilderness in Dungeons & Dragons. They were wild creatures. And then they had a spiritual experience, and they started to have an understanding that there was a divine entity. They believed there was a divine entity at the sort of the heart of the universe, and that this divine entity was benevolent in nature and all this stuff. And I was 15. I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's just bullshit. Like, what is that? There's nothing in my life that would tell me that there is a God or a divine entity, and that God is somehow benevolent or interested in humanity. That was just all, frankly, quite bullshit to me, Britt. I thought, that's ridiculous. So I happened to be playing the game Yahtzee with my sister-in-law. And, Yahtzee, for those of you who don't know, is a game that's played with 5 dice. And the goal of Yahtzee is to roll 5 dice of the same. That's a Yahtzee, and you can get all these different points. But, the apex predator is a Yahtzee. And of course, it's a Yahtzee in whatever you can do. You roll a couple, you got 2 twos, you go, I'm going to try to match my twos. But you don't predict in advance what it's going to be. You find it along the way. Well, I'm having this conversation with my sister-in-law over the Yahtzee game, and I said, tell you what, you talk about this divine entity like it's real and can do all these things and whatever, and interested somehow in humanity. You know what? Tell you what, I'll give you a chance to prove it to me. And I said to her, tell you what, if you can roll a Yahtzee in ones, and I said, I'll give you 3 chances to because you get 3 rolls in Yahtzee. I said, if you roll 2 ones and then great, you roll 2, whatever, you got to roll ones though. Yahtzee has to be ones at the end, not just any number, ones. Roll 2 and then add 2, whatever you need to do. But I actually said to her, if the God you think you believe in can't do this, then there's no way that this thing exists. So my sister-in-law, in a sense of foolish abandonment, said, okay, not a problem. She took the 5 dice, threw them into the can, and I don't know if you ever played the game. You got that clanking sound of the dice in the plastic cup.
Yep.
My sister-in-law dumped the dice on the table and rolled 5 ones the first time, and that's how I came to this understanding, which is a ridiculous challenge when you think about it. But those 5 ones on the table was a representation to me that I guess there is a benevolent divine entity somehow. Again, and if you're listening in, you might think that's bullshit and you don't believe it. That's okay. You don't have to. But I had no choice but to believe something that day. Now, what I believed that all meant in the day, I believe fundamentally different today. I mean, again, because you come to a belief and then you say this is the truth, and then you might wander over the years and try to figure it out. I'm a wandering soul. Maybe that's why I'd be good at D&D. I'm a wandering soul by nature. But there's no doubt that I can't deny that back when I was 15 years old, which is, close to 45 years ago now, I'm going to be 60. Is that the reality is that I had an experience that it's hard to explain, and that the dice were part of a fated experience, I suppose, for me that totally changed my life. I do believe that my life is fundamentally different today as a result of that experience. The dice, in my case, were a predictor of fate. By the way, is it thundering where you are?
It is.
Okay, this is getting weird now, because I'm hearing the thunder in the background, and I'm like, okay, now it's thundering, which is really awesome for this conversation. I'm
Yes,
like,
it's
okay,
perfect.
now it's thundering. Okay, by the way, you better check out this thing now, people, because it's thundering. But that's my story when it comes to dice, Brittany, and I don't think I've ever shared that I don't share it with many people, to be honest. I'm sure I haven't shared it with you.
No.
But that's why I find interesting part of the game is that dice have this fateful promise or something or opportunity. I hate to say, but my life is a great example of this. I do believe that my life is fundamentally different. I mean, my family is different. I believe the way I raise my kids are different because of that experience, because that experience led me down a certain path of discipline and belief in my life, which was very different than who I was at the time. In fact, those dice changed my story forever. And if I understand correctly, this is part of what happens in D&D is the dice play this role of some fate in the lives of the characters in the story, and they change the destiny or the trajectory of the story as it's told. Am I getting this right?
You are 100% correct. In fact, one of the favorite stories that Craig likes to share from our table is Anya decided in a reckless abandonment to get up and try to dance. For the record, that is something that her fear of dancing is something that came from me. Not a dancer, not comfortable getting up to dance. So I thought, okay, sure. Anya might try to get up and dance. And our game master said, okay, I need you to roll a performance check. See how well this goes. Well, I rolled a 2, which meant so generally you have difficulty levels. So you have to try to hit a certain number, or like when we were rolling for the werewolf, you have to hit their armor, which represents how strong they are. So there was a difficulty set. I did not meet it. I absolutely failed. And instead, she gets up and she does this. We've described it as the dance, as Elaine dancing from Seinfeld. And it is still a thing that we talk about because it went horribly. She was mortified, but Sikander, his character, was trying to encourage her, and it spiraled into this legend that Sikander tells now. And it's still something that outside the game, we still laugh and talk about because it was such a funny memory. But it definitely changed the course of things that she tried to do because, I got up and it didn't go well, and I'm not going to try to do that again.
Interesting.
But then having other people come around her and try to encourage her, that's, if she had done well, the story would have gone completely differently.
Right.
And that's every dice roll.
Yeah, and it does say a little bit about sometimes is that when there's failure or when there's difficulty, actually the lessons are deeper and the stories are better and all the things that happen with that. And, Britt, first of all, I really want to thank you for coming on and having this conversation with me. And again, if you're listening for the reason I really do believe. I don't know what this means to you. You'll have to figure that out. But Britt, I do appreciate that. And I want to point out something to my listeners and to people who watch on YouTube. And when Britt agreed to come, she came with some trepidation. And even as early as this morning, I got another email from Britt about, I'm a little nervous to do that. Britt, there's nothing in this conversation that would suggest that you have any nervousness about this conversation, which I really love. So I'm really glad that you found a way to have the conversation in a way that is comfortable for you. I also just appreciate how you've shared personally about your own journey. How this game and this community is helping you and how you're finding yourself and finding healing, how you're helping others find healing through the game, which I find just wonderful. And I think it speaks to the game, but it speaks more to the game master in this case, and that'd be you. And by the way, I'm going to just speak to my producers right now. When you're producing this episode, I forbade you to remove from Britt's microphone the thunder rolls of thunder in Florida because it's just so classically punctuates. It's giving this wonderful, like, sort of medieval castle feel to this conversation. So, Alin, if you produce this episode, or Chris McQueen, if you produce this episode, I forbade thee to remove. I'm going to roll dice against you. To you remove those rolls of thunder in the background because they're so wonderfully well placed. But thanks for having this conversation. And so I am interested in this because you're clearly finding a unique expression. And I often ask people when they come to my show, when Britt's going into a room and bringing that unique thing that you bring into any room that you go, what unique expression of yourself do you think that you're finding again for the positive benefit of others? Like, what does that unique expression of Britt look like for the positive benefit of others when you're walking in a room?
I have getting to bring joy to people and create community is how I feel I have accomplished something, especially when it comes to running a game. So if we get up at the table and everyone starts to work together and come alongside each other and they're having a good time and it's because we're all telling the story together, then I know I've done a good job.
That's awesome. And again, so listen, what a wonderful way of thinking. When Britt's bringing joy and community into a room, she's bringing that uncommodifying factor. My challenge to you listeners is, what does that look like for you? Joy is a powerful force. We don't think about it a lot like that. I love the term, are you bringing a sense of joy? Do you bring community? And again, are we inviting each other into story? What story are we telling with our lives? At the end of the day, our lives will ultimately, eventually only become a story. I mean, there'll become a time, much quicker for me than you, Britt, when I won't be here anymore on this storyboard, on this earth. And the only thing that will be left about me will be my story. The story is the essence of what's everlasting. What lasts or survives is the story, the fables of the journeys of the great episodes or adventures of my life. That's all that's left in the end. And so, listen, if you're listening in for a reason, whether you play D&D or not, whether you play a game so you can find yourself and you can express yourself in a way that's wonderful for you, or you just understanding you're writing a story every day in your life. This is the power of storytelling. And so go write the best story for yourself and the best story on others, because you have the power, you have the pen, you have the paper to write your own story. Don't let anybody else write it for you. And be careful, please, my friends, of the kind of story you're writing on others, because sometimes that ink that we write on others is very, very difficult to erase. So remember, when you get a chance to write a story on someone else's life, write it with care and concern, and write it in a way that it brings joy and community and healing and wholeness to others around you. Again, if you listened in, you're listening for a reason, do me a favor, DM me or email me at tim@uncommodified.com and let Britt and I know what you're thinking about or doing with this conversation. It's a different one. It's taking us in a really great direction. I love it. Britt, thanks again for coming on the show. Absolute delight. And thanks for coming to visit us in Canada. It was absolutely delightful to meet you in the summer in person.
It was a true joy. So thank you for having me, Tim.
Cheers.